So, hi, nice to meet you all. Um, I'm Kristen Masta, and I'll be your facilitator today. And this Google Hangout slash YouTube Live event is sponsored by ACRL's University Libraries section, the Academic Outreach Committee. So if you aren't a member of that committee and you do belong to ACRL, we encourage you to join us. And if you're not a member of ACRL and you found us another way through maybe the library marketing and outreach group on Facebook or other places, that's great too. You don't have to be a member to certainly chat, so certainly spread that around. And I posted a link where you can find our information on ALA's page. So I just want to welcome you to our first fall session. And today we're going to be kind of talking about, and I think it's very timely, around library outreach and civic engagement. So we'll be talking about how libraries are involved in civic engagement. How do we each define that at our institution, or maybe you can't even speak to your institution or how you would. How do you work with on-campus partners and off-campus partners, benefits and what challenges there are to getting involved, and other things. And, you know, sharing successes. We can also share failures too, because we can always learn from those. And just some lessons learned. So I sent some discussion questions in advance, but I'll just kind of walk us through that. And we don't have to like totally follow those. We can just see where the conversation goes as well over the next hour. So I'm Kristen Mastel. I'm at the University of Minnesota, and I do outreach programming for the St. Paul campus libraries, because we're kind of a split Minneapolis-St. Paul campus, and there's 3 libraries over here. So that's a little bit about me, and I'll just kind of call on your first names, and maybe you can introduce yourself to the group. So maybe we can go to the other Kristen.
Sure. Hi, I'm Kristen Schuler. I'm Director of Outreach and Partnerships at the James Madison University Libraries and Educational Technologies. I focus on outreach to current and prospective students and partnerships with student affairs units on campus. And I'm the backup facilitator, mostly taking notes, but I also want to participate because I'm really interested in this topic.
Thanks so much, Kristen. Happy to have you. How about Win?
Okay, I'm Win Wasson. I'm the social sciences librarian at the Jane Bancroft Cook Library, which serves both New College of Florida and University of South Florida, Sarasota Manatee. And I've sort of been tasked with civic engagement and the library's role in it. So back in during orientation week, I was in charge of the civic engagement night that we put on for new students, and then they also tasked me for putting together the campus's observance of Constitution Day, which was somewhat muddled by the hurricane, but that was those were the things that I've been doing, and the dean of the library wants me to put together more of those types of events, so that's why I'm here.
Great, thanks so much, Win. Let's see here. How about George?
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm George Fowler. I'm the university librarian at Old Dominion University. And long story short, as well as I can make it, did my dissertation, which says that, proved to me that libraries need to be the center for intersubjective communication or dialogue, and seeing how our State Council for Higher Education just made civic engagement one of our core competencies for students, and seeing deliberation be a critical part of that. I'm currently working to revitalize a Center for Civic Engagement within our metropolitan area and building relationships on campus and off to do such a thing. So here sort of lurking to see what everyone else is already doing.
Great. Thanks, George. I think you'll have lots to add, and you probably could have been the facilitator for this. So thanks so much. Is it Aaliyah? I'm sorry, I forgot again. Aaliyah, I believe.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Elia Trucks. I'm the User Experience and Student Outreach Librarian at the University of Denver in Denver, Colorado. I work with undergraduate and graduate students on programming, getting them into the library, letting them know what services and resources we have. I just started this summer, so this is my first job out of library school. I'm really interested in bringing more civic engagement into the library, hosting programs or events that really get students to connect and be more engaged in the community. So I've done a couple of programs at my previous institution, but they were really small. So I'm looking for more ideas and seeing what I can contribute as well.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much. And then I believe we have, let's see here, Paige, you joined us.
Yeah, I finally got in. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Sorry you were having trouble.
Yeah, I was having some issues. I can't get my webcam up and running, but I do at least have a microphone now. So,
Fine.
and I missed the first part. What am I supposed to be telling you?
Oh, just introduce who you are, where you work, a little bit around outreach.
Awesome.
You know, like what your role is.
I am the social media and information literacy librarian at Avila University in Kansas City, Missouri. I am currently trying to change my title to actually be outreach and instruction because I'm tired of having to spit out a mouthful every single time people ask what my job is. At this point, a lot of my outreach is trying to just participate in campus events as well as like working with community or with campus organizations to bring stuff into the library. We're actually getting ready to host a book premiere in November for one of our faculty members. And so it's a lot of just working with people on campus, trying to get stuff in the library or remind them that the library does in fact exist. So yeah, that's what I do.
Very nice. Thanks. And last but not least, I think Gary.
Yes, that's me.
Yep.
Is the microphone working? Excellent.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, I am the reference and outreach librarian at William Patterson University in New Jersey, the Cheng Library. Little caveat, I have been in this position, today is day 16. So I didn't have time to set up my my webcam. I'm running from place to place trying to get oriented and situated. So I'm hoping to learn, but I've been at the university for quite a long time, so I already have an in with some outreach type things, and I've been an adjunct professor in political science and public policy. So we've done a lot of civic engagement topics in that area. So I'm looking to do more with the library in this topic area.
Oh, great. I think you'll have a great background to bring. And I love our range of experience and interests and probably comfort levels as well in this topic. So thank you all so much. I think it's going to be a great conversation. So the first one is a little bit more like, if you know, for example, I really don't. Like, does your library have a definition for civic engagement, or how would you, like, personally, professionally, define maybe civic engagement, and do they view it as important on campus? You know, I know, George, you mentioned that now it's a part of kind of like undergraduate like learning objectives, basically, outcomes, which I think is great. We have like threads of that here at the University of Minnesota, or a ton, not a ton. I think, and we're also looking to redo our whole model of what the undergraduates, when they graduate here, what are some of those skills that they should be competent in. And so that's going through a whole new rewrite. So I'm hoping that this might be a part of it. So if anyone would like to share, feel free to chime in on your thoughts from either yourself or your institution.
All right, I'll break the silence. So civic engagement here at Avila is kind of different, I think, maybe, I don't know. We were founded by a group of Catholic sisters, and so charism is a big buzzword on campus, and it's all about going out and helping the neighbors. So we do volunteer experiences for students throughout the year. They're actually required in their freshman year to go with us to Harvesters, which is a big giant food bank group, and help sort food and just work with them for a day. And so that is engagement, at least, not necessarily civic. I see civic engagement as more of like engaging in the political spectrum, going into listening to people speak, or going to even a rally, or participating in the general just discussion of the political climate here in the United States or elsewhere. And we're slowly seeing more of that on campus. We actually have an activist in residence now. We have a peace and nonviolence initiative on campus, and that came in last year, so it's new. And we are still trying to figure out how to get the library to go participate in that. And it's part of the reason why I sat in on this today, because I'm trying to figure out ways that I can actually work with this group and be like, okay, what can we do? So yeah, that's my bit.
Thanks, Paige. That's really interesting about, kind of like the day of service as a way to kind of introduce students very at the beginning while they're still kind of getting their feet wet academically and kind of developing their skills. So I really like that. Any other thoughts?
So, go ahead. Okay, I'll go real quick. So we're discussing it in. Wait, am I still here? Okay. We're discussing it in several different conversations. Part of the conversation is about community engagement and wanting to go for the Carnegie classification for a community engaged campus. So we want to do that, but we're also merging that with civic engagement. So being a part of the society you're a member of, and we're all members of multiple societies or communities. So how can we get involved, informed, and move those communities forward? See the library as a critical part of that, as the Center for Information and actively neutral for convening conversations. We don't get to take sides on any of this unless it infringes on our right to or ability to fulfill our purpose. Active neutrality and providing open access to all information to all people in a safe and comfortable way is my thought in a nutshell. But there are initiatives on campus for community engagement, for civic engagement. We're sort of merging the two. Entrepreneurism is a big buzzword at our university, and we're trying to embrace social entrepreneurism in a way. So trying to mash all these things into one big effort and see what turns out. It'll probably be big mush, but that's sort of where we are, and there's a lot of different interest at different high levels throughout the university. So I'm optimistic that something big will come out of this, and I'm hoping that the libraries get to play a key role, so that way it can become or stay as unbiased as possible, so it's not propagating a certain agenda or another.
Thanks so much.
I'll offer some thoughts from my university. James Madison University is named after James Madison, one of the people involved in bringing the Constitution to reality. And one of our recent areas of focus is civic engagement, partially because of that connection And I think it was in 2014 when they launched a new strategic plan, and civic engagement is a huge part of that. We just launched a new center for civic engagement on campus. And so I'm curious to see what they do. I'm actually meeting with the director pretty soon to learn more. And some of the things that campus focuses on is expanding student voter registration and student participation in the political process, and events and other things, panels to bring civic engagement topics to students, staff, and faculty on campus. But they're also trying to do more than just voter registration, trying to move beyond that. But that's one of the current focuses. And then in the library, we're trying to support that within the organization through the programs and the outreach that we do. And we think of it in kind of three portions. We think of electoral participation, like I just mentioned, voting and registering to vote. Political participation, like contacting elected officials and other ways to participate in that process. And then community problem solving or other kind of community participation, including volunteering. But that sort of gets over into community engagement, as a couple of you have mentioned, which is another area of focus on campus. So that's kind of the biggest overlap area. And so for us in the library, we focus a little more on the electoral participation and political participation. And we're just getting started in the past year or so, trying to really focus on that with our work.
And for our civic engagement night activity, one of the things that we did, we had some organizations that were sort of more politically bent, trying to change the policy environment, but there were also some community service organizations there too. So I also come from a political science background, used to teach political science, so that was kind of how I initially thought of civic engagement. But a lot of the organizations that our student affairs office brought were more community service based organizations. So
I guess I can go next if nobody else is jumping in.
Yep, go for it.
Okay. So luckily at the university I'm at William-Paterson in New Jersey, we have a somewhat strong, I think, civic engagement, and we're kind of lucky in this aspect. It's actually been made a part of our university core curriculum. So it's like general education courses. There's actually an area that requires courses on civic and community engagement, which has been very nice. But so far the library has only participated in those things as much as they support the academic classes through like LibGuides and resource guides. And then it's kind of been separated into two forms of like the academic and then co-curricular, which is run by like campus activities, where there's the civic engagement aspects on campus, which they've been very good at leading in the state. They were one of the first universities to create the New Jersey Campus Compact, which is part of the National Campus Compact. And they've been branding it with Twitter hashtags #DoGoodWP. And the library just kind of been only supporting the academic classes, hasn't really been doing much interaction with campus activities and student leadership. That's one of the areas that I'm hoping to bridge the gap on to get into. But the aspect that it's in the core curriculum for the university, it's been such a mainstay of the administration, has been very good for us as a campus, I believe, to get involved.
I know this is kind of jumping ahead to question 3, but at my institution, there is no such thing as a core curriculum, which has both a blessing and a curse to it. So I mean, it's a nice idea for a core curriculum that includes community service, but I doubt our faculty are going to adopt that. So I mean, I'm really curious as to we're doing more outside extracurriculars, so I'm curious. Like I say, we have kind of the opposite problem that you do, Gary.
Yeah, this is Joan. Can you all hear me? If I,
Yep, we can hear you.
I was gonna jump in. Sorry, I'm late. So, you know, what's interesting is that at my university, the university's like motto is "Let knowledge serve the city," and that is super important here. But we don't necessarily, and it's important, and they really encourage people to do things that are engaged in our city, but that's not necessarily, that tends to be work we do as librarians if we're interested, especially like in our special collections and archives. We have, I mean, our collections are very locally focused, and our archivist is working hard to increase, to have basically more diverse voices in that collection. But and some of us are involved in our community locally, I mean, certainly personally, but also as professional librarians. But I don't know that we do a lot, and our students are really engaged, but I don't know that, I'm sure there are exceptions, that we do a lot with our students and faculty on their engagement in our local community. So it's like we have our own stuff and the students and faculty do their things, and but it's not so much part of our work that we're engaged in sort of all of that at the same time, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great perspective, Joan. And Joan, do you mind just introducing yourself?
Yeah, sorry, I had another meeting, so I don't know what. So yeah, I'm Joan Pettit. I'm the communications and outreach librarian at Portland State University. So I'm in Oregon, and I don't know what else, but there you go. Yeah, and I have outreach in my title, and it's one of those like amorphous words that means something different to everybody who hears it. And so.
Right. Yes, because there is no one definition that
right, exactly,
could ever agree on. Great. Yeah. So it's, I mean, really all of our institutions are kind of different and hybrid approaches to a more integrated approach. So thank you. Yeah. So as said before, like, not a lot of us have necessarily established programs in the library. We might be partnering, for example, at my institution, we see it more in courses than us. You know, we do a lot around, voter registration and around, election years, but not as much necessarily throughout the other years. However, we're really ingrained in like any of the policy and legislative courses and things like that. So I was curious if folks have other thoughts on how maybe you're integrated into the curriculum at all, or how you are promoting or influencing civic engagement with the libraries.
So the University of Denver strategic plan that was put in place a couple of years ago really emphasized community engagement for the public good. And there's a center on campus called the Center for Community Engagement and Service Learning. And right now I'm working on building a relationship with them they have a program called Scholar Shop, where they will link a student who wants to do a research project with a faculty member who's going to assist them with a community partner, like it might be the food bank or a women's organization, and help them do research that they may not have access to, or they may not have the funds to be able to do themselves. So we're working with them right now on getting that program up and running with library support. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And then in the past, in terms of like electoral engagement, not this past election, but the one before at my previous institution, we had debate night watch parties. We had an event where we brought in the college Republicans, college Democrats, independent group, college libertarians, and it wasn't a debate necessarily, but they had a conversation, and students were invited to ask questions and talk to them about, what their student organizations do and how to get involved with that. And that was really successful. Students really liked being able to see the people who are currently involved and get involved themselves. themselves, but that was held during an election year. And so doing it on an off year, I'm trying to think of new ways to get them involved as well, because without all of the press and it's not on their minds as much. So that's what we've done.
Thanks so much.
I'll share a few ways we've promoted it, civic engagement through our work in the libraries. We've held a couple of events which are kind of like passive programs where we design a postcard relevant to a specific holiday, like we've done send a Valentine to your representative and send a Constitution Day postcard to your representative. And on the table are the free postcards that we've designed, so you can write on the back, and then notes, a note about how to find out who your representatives are, and then a locked box where they can mail them, and then we put them in a large envelope to mail to the representatives, even though it may be more impactful to mail them one by one. We don't want to stamp each one or make a student have to have a stamp in order to participate. So that's been pretty successful. We've done that twice, like I said, once for Valentine's Day and once for Constitution Day. And besides like a couple of panels, a couple of other things that I already sort of mentioned, we've also done a game on Constitution Day. It was a Constitution-themed Jeopardy in the lobby of both of our main libraries. And it was pretty fun. It was pretty well attended. It did take a lot of work to write custom questions based on our own research, but we enjoyed researching it. So I call that one a definite success in our case. Those are just a few examples that came to my mind.
Those are great, and they'd be super awesome to share that hard work. So maybe those of us that aren't doing that could maybe adopt it. So I love those. There's also the library by design, kind of good design blog that you can maybe submit those to as well. So I like those ideas. I'm also curious, has anyone done like a workshop, since there are so many like hot topics right now, just around, like how do you even engage? How do you make an appointment? How do you, write your letter? What's the most effective way to contact your legislators? Has anyone done something like that? Because we've been kind of interested, but, I was thinking of like partnering with someone who works at, our state government and, with our government docs librarian, partnering together to develop something. I was just curious if anyone's done something around that.
I would love to hear if anyone has too, because we're super interested in that and hoping to do one in the spring, but we haven't figured out who to partner with yet. But so we haven't done it, but that's definitely on our list.
Sounds like Kristen, we're both of us are gonna have to develop it, or maybe Gary Wynn has some suggestions for us.
Oh, well, I don't know that I necessarily have suggestions, but I do like, some of the ideas coming forward, like Constitution Day Jeopardy sounds kind of interesting, but I mean, it's one of these things that I'm, kind of, trying to look for programming ideas that don't have to do with orientation, elections, and Constitution Day, things that I can do more year-round, because that's kind of what I've been tasked with at this point in time, is doing more of this program year-round. So again, the Valentine's Day thing looks interesting, but those are the types of things that I guess I'm looking for idea-wise.
So I'm definitely at the beginning stages of all of this, and not necessarily the right person who will be doing most of the work, but trying to lay the groundwork. So hopefully I can get a new position who could be doing most of the work that I'm dreaming up now. But one of the based things I'm working on is going to become an institutional member of the NCDD, National Coalition for Dialogue and Deliberation, and looking at NIFI, 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 National Issues Forum, or something like that. Because in Hampton Roads, Tidewater region of Virginia, sea level rise and ground shrinking is those are two big concerns of ours that affect us on sunny days, on rainy days, on non-existent days. They affect us all the time. So if I look at it, civic engagement, as like what Wynn was saying, how do we do this in a more sustained way, and that aren't just around elections. And as critical as elections are, it's important that we do those things, but all of these things could be continual conversations that we have with local, regional, state, federal legislators and representatives. And so I'm looking to those as places where I can engage or leverage what a lot of other people are already doing to try to equip my librarians with understanding what roles we could be playing, while I'm also building relationships at the university. And I'm fortunate that there are several people in the community, including public librarians and school librarians, who are really interested in civic engagement and in partnering with me and my institution to see what we can do collectively. So it isn't just us, and can see what's the appropriate balance for things we can do in all types of libraries in the region, and not just thinking that it's us. So I'd be interested if anyone else has reached out to public or school librarians and seeing what they're doing with civic engagement.
George, we're not doing that yet, but that's a great idea. So thank you for mentioning it.
So I can chime in a little bit if I could. One of the things that we've been looking at is kind of putting our mission of the library and relating it to civic engagement, community engagement. So we've been focusing kind of on like information literacy and creating kind of programs and partnering with groups to kind of do our part of information literacy to create informed participants. I think this is what we've been going with. And we've actually, there's a few librarians here that I'm working with. We're presenting at a New Jersey Future Educators Conference on Friday, and then again at the New Jersey School Librarians Conference in November on information literacy and navigating fake news. So they're doing a presentation working with the public school librarians, the school media specialists in the state, on how they're teaching students to be active and informed participants in society, and not leaning more away from that, in the activism side of it, and more of just, learning how to process the information and then become involved after that fact. Has kind of been the approach we've been utilizing now. And it's been pretty well, especially because the topic of fake news is so entertaining at some points. It definitely captures the attention of students at almost any age group. And at the college level, we're lucky. We have a gubernatorial debate going on, and our institution is actually hosting one of the two debates. And we're hopefully we're working on a project right now where we're partnering with the communication department and political science to do a program on fake news, media bias, and its effect on the electorate. So we have a couple different campus partners, and seeing what we can put together and how successful that can be on campus.
Nice. I like that you're getting out of your own institution and presenting at these larger conferences and events, so you can kind of continue the conversation and start seeding some ideas of people partnering with their media specialists and local libraries across and whatnot. In my old hat, like, oh gosh, 8 years ago, I used to work for Minitex, which was our statewide consortium, and they still are doing, we do a lot of webinars with like guest presenters. So often we'll have like the university's government documents librarian, since we're a regional depository, kind of sharing information with everyone, but also doing a cross-institutional training on, you know, statewide databases and government information. So that's just a very high level, and that's geared more at library staff than like the end user. So I love your ideas of how to kind of work our way to the end user through teachers and other folks. So that's great. Any other thoughts? And if not about that, I would love to hear what some other partnerships, who else you've partnered with maybe at your campus. We've kind of talked about like different student groups, of course, that are different political parties potentially, and then like if you're lucky enough to have an Office of Community Engagement. But are there any others that maybe we haven't discussed that folks are hoping to start some conversations with?
We do. We're hoping. We haven't got the partnership built just yet, but we are actually hoping to partner. We have a Model UN on campus, and it's a very small group, but we're hoping that we could try and build some sort of partnership with them other than just providing space to get some events in the library that might be very, very interesting to some more of the more civically minded on campus. When the election was going on, and we missed the boat on this, but there is a group locally that will actually come in and do voter registration set up, and you can invite them in and they'll come in and have all the paperwork and stuff. And we missed the boat. We weren't fast enough to get them there. But our hope is next time that there's some sort of big race in town, or at least within the state, that we can bring them in and actually have like a voter registration drive. That's something we would really like to do. And with the activists and residents, we're still not quite sure what we're going to do with her, but we know that we want to work with her and bring in some stuff into the library. The issue is that she speaks French and French only. So we're trying to kind of figure out how to work with her and her interpreter, and then get people into the library that are wanting to hear her story, and how we can make that work together. So I'm interested in any ideas you guys have.
Actually, we just, we had a big library, I'm sure we've all had library displays, but we had a very good partnership with one of the graphic design courses that created political posters, even in an off year, around different themes. And that was wildly popular. That was all kind of throughout a couple of our libraries. So that was kind of an interesting partnership with the graphic design school of design and the libraries, our communications folks and archives. So that was kind of cool to see. But it would be great. I don't know if your activist has an art bent, or if they could partner with like the art school. Could be really interesting there, because language and arts blend well together. I guess one question we haven't really touched on yet is about inclusivity. How do we use outreach to promote a sense of inclusivity and diversity at our campus and around engagement? If folks have thoughts around that, inclusive programming that we're doing.
Me again, I've put the mic back down. We haven't done much, but we are trying. We've actually found a handful of posters just from the internet Our favorite one is just the All Are Welcome Here. It was by the Small Business Bureau locally here, and it's got basically just says All Are Welcome Here with the rainbow heart, but has You Are Welcome written in, I think, about 15 or 20 different languages. And we have posted those on staff doors and just throughout the library. When they come back from fall break, I'm hoping to have Post-it notes scattered about throughout the library, doing the You're welcome, your opinions matter, you matter, that sort of thing. We have group study rooms with writable walls, and we intend to go scrawl stuff all over them. And we try and do that sort of stuff. And then again, just trying to bring in programs that are going to be curious for everybody, not just one side. I know one of the questions on there was, how do you avoid being too political? And that's something we have to work on, because our staff is very much on the left side of the spectrum, and we're having a hard time trying to find a way to bring in engagement in that way, but have it be all sides. So yeah, there you go.
You know, that this is pretty important for me, and where I see the roles being. And Paige, I definitely appreciate what you're saying about how do we bracket our own assumptions and provide an opportunity for people to engage in meaningful dialogue if we don't agree with them. And how do we facilitate these types of conversations if we're not good facilitators ourselves? So I struggle with a lot of those things and try and figure out, okay, if we do take this on, what does this really mean for us? And there are a lot of interesting conversations happening within the libraries on that topic. But it's in a conversation I had today with the vice provost, where a faculty member who's also the director of our Institute for Humanities over in our Arts and Letters department, we're proposing what we're calling the Center for Civic Engagement and Social Innovation, but want to talk with him. And one of the ways we framed this is that the center would be within the libraries, and we're not a faculty unit. We don't have tenure. We're administrative professional faculty. So how we'd engage with faculty and students and programming and all of that it will be a challenge if it happens. But the reason we're pretty adamant about that is that of all the units on campus or the university itself, we are perceived as the most neutral. And as long as we don't let some bad actors in the library world try to prove us wrong, that we are so far leaning in a certain direction that we can maintain our neutrality or fight for our neutrality, then we stand a better chance of working across academic units within the university. Because if it's housed in arts and letters, then engineering won't be so interested. If it's a business, then everyone will think it only has an economic perspective or money making bent to it. So if we're able to house it and let it be administered through the libraries, then we think we have a better chance of success both within the university community and in the broader broader regional community to be inclusive. And I know that's really a high level perspective on this, because yes, when we get down to actually doing events or planning things, that's where the devil will be, and if we are able to be inclusive. But it's how I'm trying to start it out, so we have the best chance of being inclusive throughout our programming efforts.
That's actually kind of something that our student affairs office is trying to do. They were talking about the whole idea that the students at our campus tend to lean very far to the left, but the community as a whole in Sarasota is more to the right. And so the Student Affairs Office was thinking, okay, what happens if students go out into the community and politics comes up? How do we get these students to be able to meaningfully engage, or at least not get into an argument that's very hostile? And the buzzword that I used that the Student Affairs Office and our Community Engagement Office really liked was that I basically came up with from living in DC and teaching political science, was the idea of political diversity, which, I think everybody understands diversity, but understanding that there's a political element to that. I don't know what they ended up doing with it. You reminded me to follow up with them, but that's something that an idea to follow up with them and see what we can do at the library to help facilitate that.
Thanks so much. Any other thoughts? I'll just mention there's been a big push at our campus. I'm not sure if other campuses do, to do art of hosting training. I'm not sure if folks are familiar, but it's kind of like a one-day workshop that you go through. A lot of nonprofits kind of used it. I think that's kind of where it started, but it's around how to create like meaningful conversations and discussions in kind of a respectful manner where everyone's voices and opinions are heard. So they have a different like circle discussion technique and like World Cafe where you talk at tables and kind of move around at tables, kind of getting increasingly difficult questions or building on questions with each kind of move. There's open space technology where kind of the questions bubble up from the audience, and appreciative inquiry as well, which is more around like deeper listening techniques. So I'm not sure if anyone's used those. I know in our library, we've done some World Cafe discussions around different topics. I'd love to do more around that. In Minnesota, gosh, it's been over a year now, but Philandro Castile was killed and made national news, and that was actually just 6 blocks from my library where I am right now. So it was a very I wouldn't say it kind of political topic, but brought up a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings and a lot of discussions around a lot of issues around police brutality, but also the political system and the legal system and all sorts of things. And there was a lot of kind of World Cafe and Circle Way discussions happening around that. And it just happened to be at the same time this book was published called A Good Time for the Truth, Race in Minnesota, that provides excellent short readings that really can, change someone's, I won't say change, or open up your perspective or your attitude around, what different people have experienced in life. So there's been a lot of like book discussions across the state with various authors, contributors to that. So that's been kind of an interesting tie-in around that issue. So that's just something that's been going on here that I'd mention. But I welcome other thoughts. We have like 5 more minutes together. And so if you have other questions that we haven't talked about, ask this awesome group of folks. Feel free to any other last thoughts that you want to share. I'll just kind of leave this last bit of time open for folks.
I have a question. So we have a lot of different departments on this campus that do a lot of different individual events. So they will host their own kind of conversations or invite their own speakers. And I'm wondering if any of the other participants have worked with other departments in order to provide a library presence there. Like if I'm thinking maybe we can provide an information literacy component to whatever topic they're discussing. But I'm wondering if anyone else has built those kinds of partnerships, and how you like advertise the library and what we can do for them.
I've done one, and I just did it this year for the first time. We have a public read event every year in the fall semester, and the English department puts it on, and this was the first year they actually asked me to come and be a pop-up library. They didn't really put it that way. They're like, could you come and, you know, have some books there? Like, sure. And I literally just did it as a pop-up library. It was, the topic this year was resist, oddly, you know, very appropriate for the year. And so I pulled every book I could think of or could find that had to deal with resistance of some way. So it could just be generally resisting, people who have resisted in the past. So I pulled books by, you know, Desmond Tutu and Mandela and Martin Luther King. I pulled children's books. I pulled everything I could. And initially it was kind of sparsely paid attention to, but as the day went on and as more people came to the event, they really seemed to enjoy that we had a ton of books that they could, if they wanted to, check out or that they could use for the public read event. And it went really well. I'm hoping that they continue to have topics that we can do that for. It was a lot of fun because it meant that I actually got to attend the public read, which I don't usually get to do. So it was a lot of fun, but yeah.
Yeah, and to that point, it's where I'm still having a debate with my an initial partner on the Center for Civic Engagement, because I see two aspects to this. One is I envision what I call a center for deliberation, which is again focused in the libraries, but it's to address the concern that there are all these individual events that are more, you know, maybe popular, may not be, but they're individual one-offs, and they're not part of anything systematic, and they're not connected to anything else, and definitely not to the libraries. But you know that a lot of these opportunities don't fulfill their full potential if they're not connected, and not seeing there is no unit at my university who would or could coordinate that. So I see that as a golden opportunity for the libraries to gather this information, and in talking with some arts leaders in our regional community, that they would love it if there was a calendar of all of these events, that some they're hosting, others are hosting, and we don't even have that effectively at our university. But if you have that, that's one way of being involved, and then maybe there is a campus community or a committee that deals with activities. And if not, you know, it's definitely something to float up. I know, you know, I report directly to my provost, and he's excited about the libraries taking more of an active role in the academy, and being academic partners, not just servants, not just this place of books and places where students go to get coffee and spill it on books. You know, it's someplace meaningful, and we can engage at all levels. So if there is no entity at your university, I think that would be a strong benefit that you could contribute, and by offering to do that, which yes, it's more work, it's a great way to get yourself involved in the conversations that would lead you to being more involved in the actual activities. But it's in just one thought to how you could do that.
Thank you so much. Any other thoughts, questions, comments?
So can I ask one? I do all this talking, but I have a question because, mentioned about the Center for Dialogue, and I want the libraries to be the physical location for a lot of these conversations, because we can provide the pop-up library, can provide access to the information, we can provoke curiosity and empathy as they walk to the door to wherever we're hosting it. So we can provide, it can be a good venue. But I'm curious, are there libraries already doing that, offering themselves up and taking advantage of that opportunity to provide the library component, the information component to whatever activities are happening?
That is also my question.
Do you mean, George, playing that coordinating role that you see is missing, or do you mean bringing some sort of learning activity related to information literacy into other events that others host?
What I was thinking is, with the recent events in Charlottesville, our university had conversations, community conversation about dealing with the emotions and outcomes of that event, and thinking it was in sort of just a space. It was sort of like a cafeteria style space, general meeting place, and so there wasn't access to a lot of information. It wasn't conducive to the depth that we could have gotten if it was in the library. So if we could have, granted that meeting was 300 people and we could not have fit that in the libraries in a meaningful way, but in a smaller group, bring them, offer to host it in the libraries, so it provides a different environment, and then the libraries could be not, and we wouldn't have to worry about being there because they'd be in our space and we could be the libraries around them.
Yeah, I see what you're asking. You bring up two important issues, like being a space for an event that's conducive to the quality of dialogue needed, but that contrasts with being able to actually host that event, logistically speaking. And then you're also like asking about like who would facilitate it specifically. Would it, yeah, it's a good question. Here on campus, for instance, we had the equivalent of the Center for Teaching and Learning, which is like a faculty-oriented center. That's not what they're called, but that's what they do. Teaching and learning for faculty. They hosted those kind of events that you're describing. I believe they happened to be in the library, but only because that office is also in the library, not because they're administratively part of the library. They're just physically part of the building. But yeah, good questions. Yeah, it's tough to be that space both conceptually and physically, I think, is what I'm trying to say.
And thank you for this, and sorry I have to run. I've got a 2 p.m. So thank you. I've really enjoyed it. Learned a lot.
So much for your time. We'll send a little feedback form, so we'd love your feedback to know what we should offer in the future and how you thought this went. But thanks so much for your time, and I hope we continue the conversations and our events and our programming going forward. So now we have this community that we can bounce ideas off of. So thank you again, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.